On September 16, 2019, Noema Alavez Perez decided to take her 5-year-old daughter Dulce, her 3-year-old son Manny, and her younger sister to Bridgeton City Park after leaving her mother's house. Before reaching the park, they stopped at a local gas station so the children could get ice cream. CCTV footage from the store later confirmed their presence and showed Dulce wearing white trousers decorated with butterflies and flowers, white sandals, and a yellow shirt featuring a koala, establishing her last clearly documented appearance before arriving at the park. After leaving the station, they drove a short distance and parked beside the basketball courts at Bridgeton City Park. Upon arrival, Dulce and Manny exited the vehicle and ran toward the playground area, moving in the direction of the swings, while Noema remained seated in the car with her younger sister. From the vehicle, Noema could see portions of the park, though the playground itself was partially obscured by a small rise in the terrain. As time passed, Manny returned to the car alone, visibly upset and crying, with his ice cream on the ground. The absence of Dulce immediately raised concern, and Noema stepped out to search for her daughter, moving toward the area where the children had last been seen playing. Noema later stated that when she approached Manny, he could not clearly explain what had happened and only pointed towards structures located near the park, suggesting the direction in which Dulce may have gone. Believing at first that her daughter might be nearby or simply playing, Noema walked through the surrounding area calling her name, but found no sign of her. As panic set in, she questioned several children who had been gathered near the basketball courts to see if they had noticed where Dulce went. According to Noema's account, some children claimed they had seen Dulce running toward the buildings close to the park, while others described seeing unfamiliar adults in the area. One version mentioned an African-American man walking nearby, while another described a Hispanic man and a red van in the vicinity. These conflicting statements offered no clear explanation of Dulce's movements, increasing uncertainty about what had occurred during the brief moments she was out of sight. With Dulce still missing and no consistent account of her whereabouts, Noema realized her daughter could not be located, and the situation had escalated beyond a simple misunderstanding. She moved back toward the playground, scanning the swings, surrounding pathways, and nearby open spaces, hoping to spot Dulce among the other children still playing. Noema repeated her daughter's name several times, while visually tracing the route Dulce had taken moments earlier. Despite these efforts, there was no sign of Dulce responding or reappearing, confirming that the child was no longer within visible range of the immediate park area as daylight continued to fade slowly. Moments after realizing Dulce was missing at Bridgeton City Park, Noema Alavez Perez placed an urgent call to emergency services to report that her 5-year-old daughter could not be located. During the call, she explained that Dulce had been playing near the playground before suddenly disappearing from view, providing the location and describing the clothing she had last seen her wearing. Within minutes, patrol officers arrived at the park and began assessing the scene, gathering initial information and establishing a clear understanding of the circumstances under which the child was last observed. Law enforcement initiated an immediate search of the surrounding area, deploying canine units and bloodhounds to begin tracking any possible scent leading away from the playground. Officers moved through grassy sections, wooded edges, and open pathways while coordinating with additional units to expand the coverage radius. Despite the urgency of the response, investigators quickly recognized that the absence of CCTV cameras within the playground created a significant limitation, as no direct visual record existed showing the precise moment Dulce disappeared. The scale of Bridgeton City Park further complicated early efforts. The expansive layout required coordinated searches across multiple zones, and officers prioritized areas where a child might reasonably wander or be escorted unnoticed. As the search progressed, law enforcement personnel continued to interview witnesses who had been present during the time frame in question, carefully recording their statements to reconstruct the timeline of events. Several individuals, including children who had been near the basketball courts, offered differing accounts regarding what they may have seen. Officers documented each version methodically, noting references to unfamiliar adults and movements toward nearby structures. These initial statements were evaluated alongside Noema's account in an effort to clarify the last confirmed location and direction of travel associated with Dulce. Search teams worked systematically through the immediate vicinity while receiving support from additional responders arriving on scene. The presence of bloodhounds allowed investigators to follow potential trails for limited distances before losing any consistent direction, illustrating how fragmented the available evidence was in the earliest hours. Throughout this process, law enforcement remained focused on narrowing the window of time between Dulce being seen and the moment the report was made, aiming to preserve as much situational accuracy as possible. As dusk approached, officers maintained their organized sweep of the park, continuing interviews and coordinated movement across the terrain. Despite rapid deployment and disciplined procedures, the lack of direct surveillance footage and the broad environment left critical gaps, leaving investigators reliant on witness recollections and physical search strategies to guide the next steps of the developing investigation. Supervisors coordinated communication between ground teams and command personnel, ensuring that every reported sighting, description, and observation was logged, compared, and reviewed in real time to maintain continuity, accuracy, and structured direction throughout the evolving search effort under continually tightening time constraints within rapidly changing field conditions. Approximately 28 hours after Dulce Maria Alavez was last seen at Bridgeton City Park, authorities escalated the investigation by issuing an Amber Alert, formally classifying the case as a suspected child abduction. The alert distributed Dulce's name, age, physical description, and last known clothing details to the public through emergency broadcast systems, digital platforms, and highway message boards, marking a significant expansion of the search beyond the immediate community. This action also signaled the involvement of the FBI Child Abduction Division, which began coordinating closely with local law enforcement to provide specialized resources, analytical support, and structured investigative guidance. As part of the developing narrative, officers shared information regarding a red van reportedly seen near the park during the critical time frame. Investigators emphasized that this description originated from witness statements and acknowledged its potential inaccuracy, cautioning that variations in perspective and recollection could affect reliability. Despite this uncertainty, the vehicle description remained an important reference point as authorities continued gathering information and evaluating tips. With the Amber Alert active, the investigation widened considerably in scope. Law enforcement conducted extensive vehicle checks, monitored traffic patterns, and expanded search zones beyond Bridgeton City Park into surrounding neighborhoods and access routes. checkpoints, and coordinated patrols were utilized to assess potential movements that may have occurred shortly after the disappearance, while officers continued to document and analyze leads as they emerged. Media coverage intensified rapidly following the issuance of the alert, amplifying awareness across state lines and increasing public engagement. News outlets provided continuous updates, broadcasting Dulce's description and the associated details of the search, while encouraging viewers to report any relevant observations. This widespread dissemination ensured the case reached a broader audience, reinforcing the urgency and seriousness of the ongoing investigation. Throughout this phase, investigators remained focused on assembling a precise timeline and verifying reported sightings, carefully aligning witness accounts with physical search efforts and available information. The escalation represented a critical transition from localized response to coordinated regional investigation, underscoring the determination of authorities to locate Dulce through systematic expansion, structured communication, and sustained public awareness. During this broadened phase, investigators continued refining operational priorities to balance rapid response with careful documentation. Search planners adjusted deployment patterns, reassigned personnel, and maintained clear communication channels to process information efficiently while reducing duplication. Reports from motorists, residents, and passers-by were screened and cataloged alongside existing statements to identify consistent details and eliminate conflicting accounts. Analysts reviewed geographic patterns and timing variables to establish a clearer picture of possible movement corridors connected to the reported vehicle description. Despite acknowledging uncertainty surrounding specific observations, authorities treated each lead as a potential contributor to the evolving case structure. The cumulative effect of alerts, expanded patrol activity, and continuous media exposure maintained sustained public attention while reinforcing investigative momentum and procedural discipline throughout ongoing regional coordination efforts, ensuring oversight, accountability, and methodical progression across participating agencies involved. Following Dulce Maria Alavez's disappearance at Bridgeton City Park, members of the local community mobilized rapidly, forming organized search parties and informal groups dedicated to locating the missing child. Residents, families, and volunteers gathered in and around the park, walking through open spaces, wooded areas, and nearby paths in coordinated efforts intended to support the ongoing investigation. These actions reflected a shared determination to assist law enforcement while maintaining a visible presence of concern and solidarity throughout the neighborhood. As word spread, vigils began to emerge as a central element of the community response. Individuals assembled at the park and surrounding areas to hold candles, stand together, and demonstrate collective awareness of Dulce's absence. These gatherings served as symbolic expressions of unity and hope, emphasizing the community's desire to see the child return safely. Participants displayed posters and shared information to encourage continued awareness and to remind residents of the importance of remaining attentive to any relevant details. While the intention behind these efforts remained focused on assistance, the increasing number of people arriving at the scene created practical challenges for investigators. Law enforcement acknowledged that heavy foot traffic could inadvertently compromise physical evidence, including potential footprints or other trace materials, which may have been present during the earliest moments of the search. Despite this concern, community members remained motivated by the belief that their involvement contributed positively to the overall mission. Grassroots initiatives extended beyond physical searches, as individuals used local networks to circulate information and reinforce awareness of Dulce's case. Flyers were distributed, discussions were held among neighbors, and coordinated communication encouraged others to participate or remain watchful. These efforts emphasize vigilance rather than speculation, aligning with official guidance while keeping the case visible within public spaces. Throughout this period, community gatherings retained an emotional and symbolic significance grounded in collective responsibility rather than dramatic expression. Attendees maintained a respectful atmosphere, underscoring empathy for the family and reinforcing a shared commitment to supporting continued investigative efforts. The consistent presence of organized search teams and volunteers illustrated how the Bridgeton community responded with cohesion, purpose, and sustained engagement during the unfolding events. As days progressed, participation remained steady, reflecting an ongoing willingness to assist. The sustained turnout reinforced the importance of cooperative action while highlighting the delicate balance between public involvement and the preservation of critical evidence. This community response, characterized by shared concern and coordinated activity, became a defining element in the broader effort to locate Dulce and maintain attention on her disappearance. Local volunteers continued to monitor notice boards, community centers, and gathering points to ensure information remained accessible and consistent. Coordinators emphasized cooperation with authorities and encouraged careful movement within sensitive areas. The ongoing presence of residents demonstrated disciplined organization and mutual respect, reinforcing structured participation while sustaining awareness efforts across daily routines, reinforcing shared responsibility, and maintaining focus on supportive engagement throughout extended community activities. Media coverage surrounding Dulce Maria Alavez's disappearance intensified rapidly, shaping public perception and influencing how the case was discussed within the community and beyond. News reports, televised segments, and continuous online updates kept the circumstances highly visible, while social media platforms became central spaces for commentary, interpretation, and speculation. As information circulated, unverified claims and assumptions began to emerge, many of which focused on Noema Alavez Perez and her actions on the day her daughter vanished. Rumors spread across digital forums suggesting parental involvement or negligence, despite no confirmed evidence supporting such conclusions. These narratives prompted concern among family members, who publicly addressed the accusations to clarify their perspective and defend Noema against unfounded claims. Relatives emphasized that assumptions being shared online caused additional strain and diverted attention from the factual investigation being conducted by authorities. Law enforcement responded directly to the growing misinformation, issuing statements urging the public to refrain from speculation and to rely only on verified details released through official channels. Investigators acknowledged that every circulating comment could potentially influence witnesses or alter the clarity of developing leads, reinforcing the importance of disciplined communication. Officers reiterated that Noema remained cooperative and that her involvement in the investigation focused on locating her missing child. Family members continued to speak publicly to counter inaccurate portrayals, requesting respect and understanding while maintaining a factual approach. Their statements emphasize the emotional and logistical challenges created by persistent public judgment, though they avoided engaging in dramatic or inflammatory rhetoric. The intent remains centered on correcting misinformation and reinforcing trust in the structured investigative process. Throughout this period, the case became a subject of intense public discourse, with opinions often forming based on limited or misinterpreted information. Media outlets balanced continuous coverage with the responsibility of reporting accurate developments, yet the rapid pace of online conversation often outpaced official updates. This environment demonstrated how digital platforms can amplify both awareness and misunderstanding in equal measure. Authorities continued to monitor online narratives while maintaining focus on verified evidence and witness cooperation. By addressing misinformation and reinforcing procedural transparency, law enforcement sought to stabilize public understanding and protect the integrity of the investigation. The interaction between media reporting, online speculation, and official communication ultimately underscored the complexity of managing public perception during an active missing child case, maintaining a necessary commitment to clarity, accuracy, and documented fact throughout evolving circumstances. Police also reminded the public that speculation could distract from meaningful tips and deter individuals from sharing critical observations. Emphasis was placed on submitting information through designated channels rather than through comment threads or informal messaging. This guidance aimed to ensure that all details, regardless of perceived significance, could be evaluated objectively by trained professionals. Through consistent messaging, authorities and family members sought to redirect attention toward constructive participation and reinforce the importance of verified cooperation during each stage of the ongoing inquiry process continuity. National attention intensified when Dulce Maria Alavez's case was featured on the television program Dr. Phil, bringing renewed visibility and expanded public discussion. During the episode, Noma Alavez Perez appeared to address the circumstances surrounding her daughter's disappearance and to respond to questions regarding her actions and observations. Her testimony focused on providing clarity based on her personal account and on reaffirming her cooperation with the ongoing investigation. In her interview, Noema spoke about a former acquaintance who she stated had attempted to approach her in the past. She explained that this individual had previously tried to pursue a relationship, which she declined, and that he had seen her with Dulce before the disappearance. However, she clarified that she did not believe this person was responsible and emphasized that she was responding directly to questions posed during the televised discussion rather than making accusations. Her statements were presented as part of a factual explanation rather than an assertion of guilt. Public reaction to Noema's appearance was mixed and widely discussed across media platforms. Some viewers questioned her demeanor, describing it as unusually calm, while others noted her composed presentation as reflective of stress and emotional restraint. The contrast between open interpretation and restrained delivery became a focal point of commentary, contributing to divergent opinions regarding her credibility and emotional expression. Despite the scrutiny, Noema maintained a consistent narrative centered on her desire to locate her daughter and her continued cooperation with authorities. She reiterated her position against circulating rumors and underscored that her actions were directed towards supporting verified investigative efforts. Her appearance on the program served as a visible reinforcement of her commitment to the search process and her willingness to engage publicly in the hope of generating useful information. Throughout the broadcast and subsequent discussions, the case remained grounded in previously released details, with no new evidence or allegations introduced beyond what had already been documented. The exposure increased awareness nationally, encouraging renewed attention and discussion while maintaining the importance of verified information and procedural integrity. The televised segment highlighted the challenges of balancing public communication with ongoing investigation, demonstrating how media engagement can influence perception without altering the established factual framework, guiding official efforts and structured case progression across multiple levels of public scrutiny. Viewers and commentators continued examining Noema's tone, body language, and phrasing, often interpreting these elements through personal expectations rather than objective context. This response illustrated how televised appearances can shift focus from factual timelines to perceived emotional performance. Law enforcement maintained a neutral stance, reinforcing that public opinion would not determine investigative direction. Officials reiterated that all actionable information must be evaluated through verified sources and formal procedures. The segment ultimately reinforced the complex relationship between national exposure and investigative sensitivity, revealing how intensified visibility can simultaneously broaden awareness and complicate interpretation during an unresolved and carefully managed case development process progression period. Investigation efforts expanded as authorities continued receiving tips from other states regarding Dulce Maria Alavez's disappearance and possible sightings connected to the ongoing case. These communications were carefully logged and reviewed to determine credibility, consistency, and relevance to the established timeline. Alongside these reports, investigators began receiving anonymous letters containing cryptic references and unclear statements alleging knowledge of Dulce's location or status. Some communications prompted law enforcement to evaluate locations in Ohio mentioned within the correspondence, requiring coordinated search efforts beyond the original jurisdiction. Search teams were deployed to assess designated areas described in the messages, using structured procedures to examine terrain and surrounding zones for potential relevance. Despite organized examinations, these efforts produced no confirmed physical evidence linking the communications to Dulce's case or current whereabouts. Authorities emphasized the importance of distinguishing legitimate information from misleading or intentionally disruptive submissions. Investigators publicly clarified that every lead was assessed methodically to establish authenticity and factual grounding before further action was taken. In response to the volume of unverified claims, officials reiterated their determination to discourage hoaxes and prevent interference with the investigative process. They warned that false reports diverted valuable resources, delayed credible leads, and complicated coordination across investigative teams. Each anonymous communication was evaluated within a structured framework designed to balance cautious examination with operational efficiency. Officials maintained firm messaging that any information must originate from verifiable sources in order to hold investigative significance. Search coordination across state lines highlighted the widening scope of the inquiry and the persistence of investigative momentum. Despite the absence of confirmed results, authorities remain committed to examining all potential developments with consistency and procedural discipline. This phase of the investigation illustrated the challenges of managing external information while maintaining focus on evidence-based procedures. By clarifying evaluation standards and communicating transparent intent, law enforcement sought to uphold investigative integrity and protect the accuracy of the unfolding case record. Continued analysis of tips from multiple regions required systematic comparison against known timelines and documented movements associated with Dulce's disappearance. Investigators categorized submissions by relevance, maintained organized records, and cross-referenced details to detect patterns or inconsistencies. Whenever information appeared deliberately misleading, authorities responded with cautionary statements reinforcing the consequences of submitting false material. They reiterated that misleading communications jeopardized both investigative effectiveness and the timely allocation of essential resources. Throughout these extended efforts, law enforcement maintained clear focus on verified methodology, careful documentation, and structured reasoning. Officials openly communicated that progress depended upon responsible public participation and credible cooperation. This emphasis reinforced disciplined investigation while acknowledging the complexity of separating helpful information from disruptive interference. By maintaining consistency and transparency, authorities aim to preserve accuracy while managing the unpredictable influence of anonymous communication sources across broader regional inquiry contexts. This structured approach ensured investigatory focus remained intact and guarded against distortion within the overall process, progression maintained throughout each evaluated phase for consistency oversight. 5 years after Dulce Maria Alavez vanished from Bridgeton City Park, the case remains officially unresolved, with no confirmed recovery or definitive conclusion regarding her whereabouts. Law enforcement continues to treat the disappearance as an active investigation, reaffirming commitment through ongoing coordination, periodic appeals for information, and sustained collaboration with regional and federal agencies. Each year, community members gather for annual vigils to acknowledge the date of Dulce's disappearance and to reinforce continued awareness. These gatherings are held in a measured and respectful manner, reflecting shared concern and collective dedication to remembering her presence. Candles, photographs, and silent observances characterize these events, symbolizing unity without introducing speculative interpretation. Authorities have released age-progressed images to reflect how Dulce may appear as time advances, with the intention of generating renewed recognition or actionable tips. These images are distributed through controlled channels and complement ongoing outreach efforts designed to preserve visibility and encourage responsible reporting. Investigators consistently emphasize that the absence of conclusive evidence does not reduce procedural diligence. Case files remain open, and all relevant submissions continue to be reviewed within established frameworks, ensuring that potential information is considered methodically and without prejudice. Within the family home, Dulce's belongings are preserved with care. Clothing, personal items, and familiar possessions remain safely stored, maintained as they were when she last lived there. This preservation reflects continuity and enduring expectation that she may one day return while remaining anchored in factual continuity. Law enforcement representatives reiterate that the investigation remains active and that every credible lead is evaluated. They maintain communication with the public, reinforcing designated channels for submitting tips and discouraging misinformation or disruptive interference. The passage of time has not altered the official status of the case. Dulce remains missing, and her disappearance continues to represent an ongoing inquiry without resolution. Authorities acknowledge the challenges inherent in such circumstances, but continue to pursue verified developments using practical methods and documented procedures. Annual observances, adjusted communications, and updated imagery collectively represent structured commitment rather than symbolic closure. The consistent message remains clear and factual, reinforcing that the search for Dulce has not been abandoned and that sustained vigilance governs every aspect of the continuing process. Officials also continue to review historical data, archived interviews, and previous witness submissions to ensure no relevant detail remains overlooked. Periodic internal assessments are conducted to verify investigative consistency and confirm that procedural standards remain aligned with current best practices. Updates are issued cautiously to prevent confusion and maintain accuracy. The family has reiterated continued cooperation and adherence to guidance provided by authorities, remaining aligned with efforts directed toward factual resolution. Their continued presence in the same environment underscores connection and hope while preserving the integrity of the documented record. Despite the enduring uncertainty, every step taken by investigators reflects deliberate responsibility, reinforcing that the case remains open, active, and subject to ongoing evaluation and consistent oversight.